I was halfway through a turkey sandwich on my lunch break when I opened my banking app to check if my rent payment had gone through. Instead, I watched 6 years of my life disappear. The balance on my savings account read $17.42. I blinked. Then I refreshed the app. Same number. I closed it and logged back in. Still $17.42. For a few seconds, my brain refused to accept what I was seeing. I knew exactly how much should have been in that account. A little over $48,000. Every overtime shift. Every skipped vacation. Every birthday where I told people, "Don't buy me anything." Every Friday night I spent working instead of going out with friends. It was all in that account. Or at least, it had been yesterday. My hands started shaking. I opened the transaction history. There it was. Transfer out, $48,000. Underneath it was one line that made my stomach drop. Authorized by joint account holder. I stared at those 5 words until they blurred together. Joint account holder. There was only one other person on that account. My mother. I grabbed my phone before I could even think. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Hi, sweetheart." Her voice sounded completely normal. Like it was any other Tuesday. "Mom." The word came out much sharper than I intended. "What's wrong?" "I just checked my savings account." Silence. A long, heavy silence. Then she sighed. "I was going to tell you, eventually." Those 7 words changed the way I looked at my family forever. I stood up so quickly that my chair rolled backward and hit the break room wall. "What do you mean? I didn't want you finding out this way." "What happened to my money?" Another sigh. "I had to transfer it." I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because surely I had misunderstood. "You transferred $48,000. "Yes." "My money." "Emma." "No." I interrupted her. "My money." She lowered her voice. "I know you're upset." "Upset?" My coworkers had started glancing toward me from the other side of the break room. I grabbed my jacket and walked into the hallway. "Mom." "What?" "Tell me, this is some kind of mistake." "It isn't." "Then put it back." "I can't." Everything inside me went still. "What do you mean you can't?" "It's already been used." I leaned against the wall because my knees suddenly felt weak. "Used?" "Yes." "For what?" She hesitated just long enough for me to know I wasn't going to like the answer. "It's for your brother." Of course it was. Of course. My older brother Ryan. 31 years old. The family favorite. The golden child. The one who somehow always landed on his feet, no matter how badly he messed up. I closed my eyes. What did he do now? It isn't what he did. Then, what is it? He needed help. I laughed again, a bitter laugh this time. "So you stole from me." "I didn't steal. My account says otherwise." "I was on the account. To help me when I was 19. She didn't answer. When I opened that account during my freshman year of college, the bank required a parent because I was under 21. After I turned 21, I kept meaning to remove her. Life got busy. School. 2 jobs. Internships. I trusted my mother. It never crossed my mind that I needed protection from her. "Mom." "What?" "Why?" He would have lost everything. I stared at the floor. "So, instead, I lose everything?" "It's not like that." "No?" "No. I've been saving for 6 years." "I know. I was supposed to close on my apartment next month." Silence. "You knew that." "I know. You came with me to see it." "I remember. You stood in the kitchen and told me how proud Dad would have been." "I meant that." "So how could you do this?" Her answer came so quietly, I almost didn't hear it. "Because Ryan needed us." I felt something inside me break. Not because of the money, because of the word, us. Apparently, us didn't include me. "So, I don't?" "Emma." I don't need you." "That's not what I said." "It's exactly what you said." She started crying softly. I didn't know what else to do. You could have asked. He was desperate. So was I. No, sweetheart. She said it gently. You weren't. I frowned. What? You've always figured things out. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So, because I'm responsible. That's not what I mean. You decided I'd survive losing everything. It wasn't everything. It was 6 years of my life. Another silence. Then she said something I'll never forget. We always knew you'd recover. I didn't even respond, because there wasn't anything left to say. I ended the call, not dramatically, not with yelling. I just pressed the red button. Then I stood there in the hallway, staring at the blank screen of my phone. 6 years, gone. I left work early, not because my manager wanted me to, because she looked at my face and simply said, "Go." I drove straight to my parents' house. The same house where I'd grown up. The same house I'd spent every weekend repainting after Dad retired, because hiring painters was a waste of money. The same house where I'd bought groceries more times than I could count, because Mom's budget was tight. The same house I'd never once hesitated to help. Mom opened the door before I knocked. She looked exactly like she always did. Comfortable sweater, hair pulled back, coffee mug in her hand. Like this was an ordinary afternoon. "Emma." I walked past her without answering. "Where's Ryan?" She hesitated. "He's upstairs." I nodded. "Good." She followed me. "Please, don't start a fight." I turned around. "A fight?" "He's already stressed." I actually smiled. "He should be." She flinched. I walked upstairs and knocked once before opening Ryan's old bedroom door. He looked up from his laptop. "Oh." He smiled. "Hey, did you know?" His smile disappeared. "What?" "My savings." His shoulders immediately slumped. "Oh." That told me everything. "You knew." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I told Mom not to tell you until—" I cut him off. "You told her not to tell me?" "I wanted time." "Time for what?" "To pay you back." I laughed. "With what?" He didn't answer. Exactly. Ryan hadn't held the same job for more than 18 months in his entire adult life. There was always a reason. Bad boss. Bad timing. Bad economy. Bad luck. Never Ryan. "So where is it?" He swallowed. "It's gone." "What did you spend $48,000 on?" "I had debts." "What kind of debts?" He looked away. "I invested in a business." "What business?" "It failed." "How much did you lose?" He stayed silent. "Ryan, almost all of it." I stared at him. "So Mom emptied my savings account." "To cover your failed investment?" He nodded once. "I didn't ask her to use your money." I looked toward the hallway where Mom was standing. "You didn't?" Mom looked down. "I offered." I blinked. "What?" "He didn't want to accept it." Ryan nodded. "I told her no." Mom quietly added, "So I did it anyway." For a second, nobody spoke. Then I asked the only question that mattered. "Why?" Mom answered immediately. "Because he's my son." I felt my throat tighten. "And what am I?" She looked horrified. "You know I didn't mean—" "No." I shook my head. "I want you to answer." She couldn't. Ryan stood up. "Emma, don't do this." I looked at him. "You can stop pretending to be the good guy." "I never wanted this." "But you kept it." His face fell. "I thought she'd tell you." "And when she didn't?" Silence. "You were just going to let me buy an apartment with $17? He had no answer. Dad got home 20 minutes later. Mom called him after I arrived. He walked into the living room looking confused. "What's going on?" Nobody answered. He looked at me. "Emma?" I stood up. "Did you know?" His expression changed immediately. He looked at Mom, then Ryan, then back at me. "I found out yesterday." I couldn't believe it. "You knew?" He sighed heavily. "I told your mother this was a mistake." Mom looked hurt. You also said Ryan needed help. I said we should ask Emma. He looked at me. I didn't agree with taking it. That was somehow even worse. Because if he'd known it was wrong, he still let it happen. You could have stopped it. He looked away. I tried. No. I shook my head. You failed. The argument lasted almost 2 hours. Voices were raised. People cried. Nothing changed. Every explanation somehow came back to the same point. Ryan needed help. Ryan was struggling. Ryan was family. Finally, I asked something nobody seemed prepared for. When was the last time anyone in this house sacrificed for me? Silence. I looked at Mom. You remember sophomore year of college? She nodded cautiously. I was working mornings at the coffee shop. Yes. And nights at the bookstore. Yes. I slept 4 hours a night. She looked down. Ryan's rent was due. Nobody spoke. So, I gave you $2,000. Mom whispered. I remember. You told me you'd pay me back. She closed her eyes. I know. You never did. Ryan looked embarrassed. I forgot. I laughed. I didn't. I looked at Dad. What about when your truck broke down? He nodded. I paid the repair bill. I know. You promised to return it. I meant to. You never did. Mom started crying again. Emma. I wasn't finished. What about every Christmas when Ryan's presents somehow cost 3 times more than mine? Nobody answered. What about when he dropped out of college and everyone said he just needed time? Silence. When I got scholarships, everyone said, of course Emma did. She always works hard. I looked around the room. Do you know what that feels like? No one spoke. It feels like people stop seeing your effort because they expect it. Ryan quietly said, I never realized. No. I looked at him. You never had to. Just as I grabbed my coat to leave, the front door opened. My Aunt Linda walked inside, carrying a pie. Oh! She smiled. I didn't know everyone was here. One look at our faces, and her smile disappeared. What happened? Nobody answered. Mom quietly said, We're having a family discussion. Aunt Linda looked around the room. Then at me. Then at the tears on Mom's face. What kind of discussion? Ryan sighed. Mom used Emma's savings. Aunt Linda frowned. For what? Ryan looked ashamed. Me. She blinked. How much? I answered. $48,000. Her eyes widened. She looked at Mom. You did what? Before Mom could answer, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank. At first, I assumed it was another fraud alert. I glanced at the screen. Then my heart stopped. It wasn't from the bank. It was from the title company, handling the purchase of my apartment. Final reminder, your closing appointment has been canceled due to insufficient funds. Please contact our office immediately. I slowly lowered my phone. The room suddenly felt very small. Mom saw my face. What happened? I looked up at all of them. Then, I quietly turned the screen around so they could read it. Nobody said a word. Before anyone could speak, there was another knock at the front door. 3 firm knocks. Dad frowned. We're not expecting anyone. He opened the door. A man in a dark suit stood on the porch holding a folder. Good afternoon, he said. I'm looking for Ryan Mitchell. Ryan's face instantly went white. The man looked down at the papers in his hand before saying, I have legal documents that require your immediate signature, and they concern the $48,000 your family believes solved the problem. I'm Daniel Foster. I'm an attorney representing Harlan Capital. Ryan's shoulders immediately dropped. Mom looked confused. I thought everything had been paid. Mr. Foster looked at her. I'm afraid that's why I'm here. The room went quiet. He opened the folder and removed several documents. Mr. Mitchell, are you aware that the $48,000 paid last week only satisfied your personal guarantee? Ryan closed his eyes. Yes. I stared at him. What does that mean? He didn't answer. The attorney did. It means the payment prevented immediate legal action against Mr. Mitchell personally. Mom frowned. So, it's over? Mr. Foster slowly shook his head. No. Dad's expression hardened. What isn't over? The business. Ryan looked at the floor. The attorney continued carefully. The investment itself remains in litigation. Mom looked completely lost. I don't understand. Mr. Foster glanced at Ryan. Would you prefer to explain? Ryan whispered. No. The attorney nodded. Very well. He looked at the rest of us. Your son invested in a business venture with 2 former partners. Dad folded his arms. We know. What you may not know is that the company failed after serious financial mismanagement. Ryan squeezed his eyes shut. The remaining creditors have filed civil claims. Mom looked terrified. But we paid. You paid one obligation. He paused. There are others. I felt sick. How many others? Ryan finally answered. I don't know. Dad looked at him. You don't know? Ryan swallowed. I've been afraid to open some of the letters. Silence. The attorney slid one document across the coffee table. The current outstanding claims exceed $300,000. Mom gasped. Dad just stared. I looked at Ryan. You told Mom $48,000 would solve this. He didn't look at me. I hoped it would. Hoped? He nodded weakly. I didn't know how bad it really was. For the first time all day, I didn't feel angry. I felt exhausted, because this wasn't just one terrible decision anymore. It was dozens of terrible decisions, stacked on top of each other. Mr. Foster gathered his papers. I strongly recommend obtaining independent legal counsel. He handed Ryan another envelope. My client has no interest in unnecessary hardship. He looked around the room. But ignoring these proceedings will only make matters worse. After he left, nobody spoke. The front door closed with a soft click. It somehow sounded louder than all the shouting earlier. Finally, Dad spoke. You lied. Ryan nodded. I know. You looked your mother in the eyes. Another nod. And told her $48,000 would fix everything. Ryan wiped his face. I wanted to believe it. Mom slowly sat down. I emptied your sister's savings. She looked at me. For nothing. No, I said quietly. Not for nothing. Everyone looked at me. You emptied it because you believed Ryan mattered more than asking me. Mom immediately started crying again. I never meant... I know. And I actually did know. That was the painful part. She hadn't acted out of cruelty. She'd acted out of habit. Ryan was in trouble. Emma would understand. Emma always understood. Emma always sacrificed. That pattern had become so normal that nobody stopped to question it anymore. Not even Ryan. Dad rubbed his forehead. I should have stopped this. Mom whispered. We both should have. I didn't stay much longer. There wasn't anything left to say. As I walked toward the front door, Mom hurried after me. Emma, I turned around. I'm so sorry. I believe you. Her eyes filled with hope. But believing you're sorry doesn't erase what happened. She nodded slowly. I know. I need some space. She reached for my hand. I understand. For the first time in my life. I think she actually did. The next morning, I called the title company. The woman I'd been working with, Melissa, recognized my voice immediately. Emma, I've been hoping you'd call. I explained everything. Not every detail. Just enough. There was a long silence. Then she said something I didn't expect. I'm really sorry. I laughed softly. I appreciate that. We may have another option. I frowned. What do you mean? The seller hasn't relisted the apartment yet. My heart skipped. They haven't? No. They liked working with you. I blinked. They did. You were prepared. She smiled through the phone. They understood this wasn't something you caused. I swallowed hard. So, what happens now? They're willing to give you 90 days. I closed my eyes. 90 days. It wasn't a miracle. But it wasn't over either. Thank you. 3 days passed before anyone in my family contacted me. It wasn't Mom. It wasn't Dad. It was Ryan. His text was simple. Can we meet? I almost ignored it. Instead, I replied, 1 hour. Coffee shop on Oak Street. When I arrived, he was already there. He looked awful. He hadn't shaved. Dark circles sat under his eyes. He stood when I walked in. Thanks for coming. I nodded. Neither of us spoke until we had our drinks. Finally he looked at me. I owe you the truth. You do. He took a deep breath. I didn't lose the business because I wasn't smart enough. I waited. I lost it because I thought I was smarter than everyone else. That wasn't what I'd expected, he continued. I kept borrowing money to fix problems instead of admitting I'd made mistakes. He looked ashamed. Every time something went wrong, I convinced myself the next deal would solve everything. I stirred my coffee quietly. When did you realize you were in real trouble? A year ago. I looked up. A year? He nodded. So, you spent an entire year pretending. Yes. And when that stopped working? He nodded again. Mom became your backup plan. Tears formed in his eyes. I never asked for your savings. You accepted them. His shoulders slumped. I know. I kept telling myself I'd pay you back before you noticed. I looked at him. Ryan, what? I was closing on my apartment. I know. You knew exactly what that money was for. He whispered. I know. I took a slow breath. Why didn't you come to me? He smiled sadly. Because I knew you'd say no. He wasn't wrong. I would've. I know. Because it wasn't mine to give. He nodded. I understand that now. For the first time in years, I believed he was actually listening, not defending himself. Listening. Then he reached into his backpack. He slid a folder across the table. What's this? My financial records. I frowned. Why are you giving these to me? So you know I'm not lying anymore. Inside were account statements, debt balances, letters from attorneys, even a list of assets. He'd written one sentence across the front page. I'm selling everything I own. I looked back at him. My truck. My motorcycle. My watch collection. He smiled weakly. The little cabin. I remembered that cabin. He'd loved it. I don't deserve to keep any of it. I quietly closed the folder. This isn't about punishment. I know. It's about responsibility. He nodded. I'm finally taking it. Over the next 2 months, something happened that I'd never seen before. My parents stopped treating Ryan like someone who needed rescuing. Dad helped him meet with a bankruptcy attorney. Not to erase responsibility, to face it properly. Mom went to counseling. At first I didn't understand why. Then she asked me to have lunch. She looked nervous. I learned something. What? My therapist asked me a question. I waited. She asked why I trusted you to survive pain, but never trusted Ryan to survive consequences. I didn't say anything. I couldn't answer. She looked down. I thought I was protecting him. She laughed sadly. I was actually preventing him from growing up. I felt something inside me soften, not because everything was fixed, because for the first time, she wasn't making excuses. She was taking responsibility. Then she reached into her purse. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check. $5,000. I looked up. Mom. It's the first payment. You don't have to. Yes. Her voice was firm. I do. I can't let you. She interrupted me. For once. She smiled through tears. Let me do the right thing. I accepted it. Not because it fixed what happened. Because refusing would have meant denying her the chance to make it right. 3 months after my savings disappeared, I got another call from Melissa at the title company. The apartment is still available. I almost dropped my phone. What? The seller renewed the extension. I couldn't believe it. They did? They said they admired your determination. I smiled. So. She laughed. When would you like to schedule closing? I cried after hanging up, not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears of relief. Closing day felt different than I'd imagined all those years. When I signed the paperwork, I wasn't thinking about granite countertops or hardwood floors. I was thinking about every early morning shift, every late-night study session, every sacrifice. None of those things had been wasted. They'd simply taken me down a harder road than I'd expected. Ryan came to see the apartment a week later. He stood in the living room looking around. You did it. I did. He smiled. I'm proud of you. I laughed. You've never said that before. I should have. He looked around again. I used to think Mom and Dad believed in me more. I looked at him. They did? He nodded. But now I realize. He smiled sadly. They believed you could survive without them. That sentence stayed with me. Because it was true, they expected strength from me. But instead of appreciating it, they relied on it. Until one day, they relied on it too much. Our family isn't perfect now. I don't think it ever will be. Trust doesn't magically come back because someone says they're sorry. It comes back because people consistently choose different actions. Mom removed herself from every account she was still listed on. Not because I demanded it, because she insisted. Dad started asking more questions instead of avoiding conflict. Ryan still has years of financial rebuilding ahead of him. But for the first time in his life, he's doing it himself. No secret rescues. No borrowed solutions. No expecting someone else to carry the consequences. As for me, owning that apartment means more than I ever thought it would. Not because it's beautiful. It is. Not because it's mine. It is. But because every time I unlock the front door, I'm reminded that my future isn't built on what other people take from me. It's built on what I refuse to give up. Sometimes the deepest betrayal isn't losing money. It's discovering that the people you trusted assumed your dreams were negotiable. And sometimes the hardest conversation a family can have is finally admitting that love without accountability isn't really love at all. I still love my family. I think they love me too. The difference now is that they finally understand my sacrifices were never theirs to spend.